Little Emma Rodriguez had never spoken a single word in her 3 years of life. Not mama, not dada, not even a simple no during her most frustrated toddler moments. In their cozy two-bedroom home on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio, her parents Maria and Carlos had learned to communicate through her bright hazel eyes, delicate hand gestures, and the subtle expressions that flickered across her cherubic face like clouds passing over the sun. Every morning began the same way. Maria would lift Emma from her crib, decorated with cheerful yellow ducks and soft pink ribbons, and ask, "Good morning, me Ammer. Did you sleep well?" Emma would respond with a smile or a small nod, sometimes reaching up to touch her mother's face with her tiny palm. It was communication, yes, but not the kind Maria had dreamed about during her pregnancy, when she'd imagined bedtime stories interrupted by curious questions, or the endless why phase she'd heard other mothers both complain about and secretly cherish. The journey to understand Emma's silence had been exhausting and heartbreaking. When Emma turned 18 months old without babbling or attempting words, Maria and Carlos began their odyssey through the medical system. First came the pediatrician, Dr. Patterson, a kind woman with silver hair who'd practiced for 30 years. She ran initial tests, checked Emma's hearing, examined her throat and vocal cords. "Everything looks perfectly normal," she'd said, though her furrowed brow suggested concern. "Let's give it a few more months. Some children are just late bloomers." But those months turned into a year, and the silence persisted. They were referred to an audiologist at Cleveland Children's Hospital, where Emma sat remarkably still during the hearing tests, wearing oversized headphones that made her look even tinier than she was. The results came back crystal clear. Emma's hearing was perfect, actually above average for her age range. She could hear a whisper from across a room, could turn toward the softest sounds, could distinguish between different voices and tones. The problem wasn't reception, it was expression. Next came the speech therapist, an energetic young woman named Rebecca who filled her office with colorful toys, bubbles, and musical instruments, anything to coax sounds from reluctant children. Twice a week for 6 months, Maria drove Emma across town for sessions. Rebecca tried everything in her professional arsenal, modeling sounds, using picture cards, playing imitation games, introducing sign language as a bridge to verbal communication. Emma participated willingly, even enthusiastically at times. She would point to pictures, stack blocks when asked, and follow complex instructions. But she never made a sound beyond the occasional sigh or laugh. "She understands everything," Rebecca told Maria during one particularly difficult session, watching Emma solve a puzzle meant for 5-year-olds. "Her receptive language is actually advanced for her age, but something is blocking her expressive language. I think we need to consider a psychological component." That's how they met Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who specialized in communication disorders. Dr. Chen spent weeks observing Emma, playing with her, building trust. Finally, she delivered her assessment to Maria and Carlos in her warm, book-lined office, while Emma played quietly with dolls in the corner. "I believe Emma has selective mutism," Dr. Chen explained gently. "It's not that she can't speak, it's that severe anxiety prevents her from speaking. The physical ability is there, but psychological barriers make it feel impossible or even dangerous to her. We don't fully understand why some children develop this condition. It's not your fault, and it's not Emma's choice. Think of it like an invisible wall between her thoughts and her voice." Maria had wept then, not from blame or shame, but from the crushing weight of understanding that her daughter was trapped inside her own mind, wanting to speak but unable to break free. Carlos had held his wife, his own eyes red, while Dr. Chen offered tissues and compassion. Treatment began immediately: play therapy, gradual exposure exercises, anxiety management techniques adapted for toddlers. There were small victories. Emma began humming occasionally, and once she laughed out loud at a silly cartoon, a sound so beautiful that Maria had to leave the room to compose herself. But actual words remained elusive, locked away behind that invisible wall. Their home had adapted to this reality. Carlos learned to read Emma's needs through the tilt of her head or the direction of her gaze. Maria became fluent in her daughter's personal sign language. A tug on the sleeve meant, "Come with me." A hand on the stomach meant, "Hungry." Tears paired with reaching toward her bedroom meant, "Tired." They celebrated the communication they had while privately grieving the conversations they were missing. Extended family struggled to understand. Carlos's mother insisted they weren't being strict enough, that children needed to be pushed. Maria's sister suggested alternative treatments, special diets, vitamins, even a faith healer she'd read about online. Well-meaning neighbors offered unsolicited advice at the grocery store or playground. "Have you tried just making her talk?" one woman had asked, as if the solution were simply a matter of parental willpower. But the hardest moments came at night, when Emma was asleep and Maria would stand in the doorway of her daughter's room, watching her chest rise and fall in peaceful slumber. She'd imagine all the things Emma might be thinking, all the dreams and fears and wonderings trapped inside that beautiful little head. What did Emma's voice sound like? Was it high and musical, or soft and raspy? Did she have her father's slight accent, or her mother's tendency to speak quickly when excited? Maria whispered prayers into the darkness, to God, to the universe, to anyone who might be listening. She wasn't asking for Emma to be different or fixed, just for a key to unlock whatever was keeping her daughter's voice prisoner. She wanted Emma to experience the joy of being heard, of sharing her thoughts, of calling out to her parents across a crowded park. As Emma approached her 4th birthday, hope had become a fragile thing in the Rodriguez household, carefully protected but growing dimmer with each passing silent day. They had learned to find joy in their daughter's quiet presence, in her infectious smile and generous hugs. But the longing for her voice remained, a constant ache beneath every ordinary moment. None of them could have imagined that their miracle was just days away, waiting in the most unexpected form. A German shepherd named Valor, whose deep brown eyes would see straight into Emma's soul and show her that her voice was not something to fear, but a gift waiting to be shared with the world. On a bright Saturday morning in late September, Maria Rodriguez pushed her squeaky shopping cart through the aisles of Save Mart, their neighborhood grocery store. Emma sat in the child's seat, swinging her legs and watching other shoppers with quiet curiosity. The store was busy with weekend crowds, families restocking for the week ahead, elderly couples moving slowly through the produce section, harried parents trying to corral energetic children while grabbing items from their lists. Maria had learned to appreciate these ordinary outings. While other parents dealt with tantrums over candy or demands for sugary cereals, Emma remained peacefully silent, occasionally pointing at items she wanted her mother to notice. Today, she was particularly interested in a display of colorful apples, reaching out to touch their shiny surfaces as they passed. "We'll get some, sweetie," Maria said softly, placing 3 Honeycrisp apples in a produce bag. Emma smiled and nodded, her hazel eyes crinkling at the corners the way they did when she was happy. These small moments of connection had become precious to Maria, proof that even without words, she and her daughter could understand each other. As Maria turned toward the dairy section, she noticed the community bulletin board near the customer service desk. It was typically covered with advertisements for lawn care services, lost pet posters, and announcements for local events. One flyer in particular caught her eye. It was printed on bright blue paper with bold letters that seemed to leap off the page. "Community Safety Day," the headline proclaimed. "Meet our K-9 heroes. Sunday, September 28th, 2:05 p.m. at Riverside Park." The centerpiece of the flyer was a photograph that made Maria pause mid-step. A magnificent German shepherd sat at attention, wearing an official police vest with a badge gleaming on its side. The dog's coat was a rich mixture of black and tan, its ears stood alert and intelligent, and its dark eyes seemed to look directly at whoever viewed the photo. Beside the dog stood a police officer in full uniform, his hand resting proudly on his partner's head. Maria pulled the flyer from the board to read the details more closely. Come meet the Cleveland Police Department's K-9 unit. Watch exciting demonstrations of police dog training, obedience, and search and rescue techniques. Learn about police work and community safety. Fun activities for all ages. Free admission. Something about that photograph stirred something in Maria's chest, a feeling she'd almost forgotten how to recognize. Hope. It was small and tentative, like the first crocus pushing through snow, but it was there. Emma loved animals. It was one of the few things that could completely transform her demeanor. During their walks through the neighborhood, whenever they encountered someone walking a dog, Emma's entire face would illuminate. She'd tug on Maria's hand, pulling her closer, reaching out tentatively to pet the animal if the owner allowed it. Her fingers would gently stroke the fur, and her mouth would curve into the widest smile. Once, Maria had even heard a small gasp of delight escape Emma's lips when a golden retriever puppy had licked her hand. Not quite a word, but a sound, which felt like a victory. They'd considered getting a pet, but their landlord had strict no-animal policies, and besides, Carlos was allergic to most dog breeds. So Emma's interactions with animals remained these brief, magical moments during their daily routines. Maria studied the flyer again, her mind working through possibilities. The event was the next day, Sunday afternoon. Carlos had to work an overtime shift at the warehouse, but she could take Emma herself. The park was only 15 minutes away. The weather forecast predicted sunny skies and mild temperatures, perfect for an outdoor event. But it was more than just logistics that made Maria's heart beat faster. There was something about that police dog's expression in the photograph, an intelligence, a nobility, a calm confidence that seemed to radiate from the glossy paper. She couldn't explain it rationally, but she felt an inexplicable pull toward this event, as if some invisible thread was drawing her attention to it for a reason beyond her understanding. Maybe this will make her smile, Maria whispered to herself, carefully folding the flyer and tucking it into her purse, right next to Emma's emergency inhaler and a package of wet wipes. She returned to her shopping, but her mind kept drifting back to that image of the German Shepherd. As they moved through the checkout line, Emma pointed at a magazine display featuring a cover with puppies. Maria nodded, acknowledging her daughter's interest. "Yes, those are cute dogs," she said. Emma's eyes lingered on the images, her small finger tracing the outline of a beagle puppy through the protective plastic covering. That evening, after dinner, Maria showed Carlos the flyer. They sat together on their worn sofa while Emma played with her wooden blocks on the living room floor, building towers and then carefully deconstructing them with intense concentration. "A police dog demonstration?" Carlos asked, studying the flyer with interest. "That's tomorrow." "I thought Emma might enjoy it," Maria explained, keeping her voice casual even though her heart was racing with something that felt dangerously like anticipation. "You know how she lights up around dogs, and it's free in the park. We could use an afternoon out." Carlos looked at their daughter, then back at his wife. He'd learned to read the subtle changes in Maria's expressions after 10 years of marriage, and he recognized the glimmer of hope in her eyes even when she tried to hide it. They'd both been disappointed so many times, every therapy session that showed no progress, every specialist who had no new answers, every birthday wish that went unspoken. "I think it's a great idea," he said gently, reaching over to squeeze Maria's hand. "I'm sorry I can't come with you. Mr. Henderson is really pushing for us to finish this inventory count, but you two should definitely go. Take pictures for me." "You don't think I'm being silly?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Looking for some kind of miracle at a police demonstration?" Carlos cupped her face with his calloused hand, the result of years of warehouse work. "Me, Amber, hope is never silly. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe Emma just enjoys watching some dogs do tricks. But maybe," he trailed off, both of them understanding what didn't need to be said. Maybe this time would be different. That night, Maria lay awake long after Carlos had fallen asleep beside her, his gentle snoring a familiar comfort in the darkness. Through the baby monitor on her nightstand, she could hear Emma's soft breathing from the room next door. Maria stared at the ceiling, watching shadows from passing car headlights slide across the plaster. She thought about the flyer, now stuck to their refrigerator with a magnet shaped like the state of Ohio. She thought about that German shepherd's intelligent eyes and the way Emma's face transformed when she encountered animals. She thought about Dr. Chen's words from their last session. Sometimes breakthrough moments come from unexpected sources. Stay open to possibilities. Maria didn't believe in fortune-telling or fate, not really. But she couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow's event was important somehow, that the universe, or God, or random chance, or whatever force governed these things, had placed that flyer in her path for a reason. "Please," she whispered into the darkness, not sure who she was talking to. "Please let something good happen tomorrow. We could really use something good." She finally drifted off to sleep around midnight, her dreams filled with images of dogs and the sound of a small voice she'd never heard but desperately longed to know. Her daughter's voice, calling out with joy and freedom, finally released from whatever invisible prison held it captive. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, just as the forecast had promised. Maria woke with butterflies in her stomach, the same nervous excitement she'd felt before important events: her wedding day, Emma's birth, the first day of kindergarten she'd never gotten to experience with her daughter. She dressed Emma in her favorite outfit, a purple dress with white flowers and comfortable sneakers for walking. She packed a small bag with juice boxes, crackers, sunscreen, and Emma's favorite stuffed rabbit, just in case they needed comfort or distraction. As they prepared to leave, Maria picked up Emma and looked into her daughter's eyes. "We're going to see some special dogs today," she said, as she always did, narrating their plans even though Emma never responded verbally. "Police dogs who are very smart and very well trained. I think you're going to love them." Emma smiled and touched her mother's cheek, her usual way of showing agreement or affection. Neither of them knew that in just a few hours, their entire world was about to change forever. Riverside Park was transformed when Maria and Emma arrived at 2:15 that Sunday afternoon. The normally quiet green space, usually populated by joggers and families having picnics, had become a bustling hub of community activity. Colorful banners reading "Cleveland Police Department Community Safety Day" hung from temporary posts, flapping gently in the autumn breeze. Information booths lined the walking paths, staffed by officers in crisp uniforms who chatted with residents about neighborhood safety programs. Maria held Emma's hand tightly as they navigated through the growing crowd. There had to be at least 200 people already gathered, maybe more. Families with children, elderly couples, teenagers in groups. The entire community had turned out for the event. The air buzzed with excited conversations and children's laughter. "This way, sweetie," Maria murmured, steering Emma toward a roped-off area where folding chairs had been arranged in a semicircle. A small stage platform had been erected at the center, and several police vehicles were parked nearby, their lights occasionally flashing to the delight of watching children. A large banner proclaimed K-9 Unit Demonstration, 2:30 p.m. They found seats in the third row, close enough to see clearly but not so close that Emma might feel overwhelmed. Maria had learned to manage her daughter's sensory sensitivities. Too much noise or too many people pressing close could make Emma anxious, causing her to shut down even further into herself. As they settled into their seats, Emma's eyes darted around, taking in every detail with her characteristic intense observation. She watched a little boy running past with a balloon, tracked a police officer demonstrating a radar gun, noticed a vendor selling cotton candy in the distance. But her gaze kept returning to the empty stage area, as if she sensed something important was about to happen there. At exactly 2:30 p.m., a commanding voice boomed through the speaker system. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Thank you for joining us today for Community Safety Day. We're excited to introduce you to some very special members of our police force, our K-9 unit. The crowd applauded as several police officers emerged from behind a tactical vehicle, but it was the last officer who captured everyone's attention. He was tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his mid-30s, with short-cropped dark hair and a confident bearing that came from years of law enforcement work. His nameplate read Morrison. But it wasn't Officer Morrison who made the crowd gasp and point. It was his partner. Walking perfectly at heel beside Officer Morrison was the most magnificent German Shepherd Maria had ever seen. The dog moved with fluid grace, each step deliberate and controlled, radiating an almost regal bearing. His coat was pristine, a stunning combination of rich black and deep tan that gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. His ears stood at perfect attention, rotating slightly to catch every sound. His dark, intelligent eyes scanned the crowd with an alertness that spoke of extensive training and natural instinct. "This is Valor," Officer Morrison announced, his voice filled with unmistakable pride as he took the microphone. "He's been my partner for 4 years, and he's one of the finest K-9 officers in the state of Ohio. Valor is a 3-year-old German Shepherd who has been trained in patrol work, narcotics detection, and search and rescue operations." Maria felt Emma's body stiffen beside her. She looked down to see her daughter leaning forward in her seat, completely transfixed. Emma's mouth hung slightly open, her breathing had quickened, and her small hands gripped the edge of her chair with unusual intensity. Maria had seen her daughter interested in things before, but this was different. This was total absorption. Officer Morrison commanded Valor to sit, and the dog dropped into a perfect sitting position instantly, his tail sweeping once across the ground before becoming still. "Valor and I train together every single day," Morrison explained, walking around his partner. "These dogs aren't just pets. They're highly skilled professionals who put their lives on the line to protect our community." The demonstration began in earnest. Morrison showed the crowd Valor's obedience training, calling out commands in both English and German. "Sits, sit. Platz, down. Bleib, stay." Valor executed each command with precision that bordered on perfection, never taking his eyes off his handler, waiting for the next instruction with focused intensity. The crowd murmured with appreciation, but Emma remained absolutely silent, leaning so far forward that Maria had to place a gentle hand on her back to keep her from sliding off the chair. Next came the demonstration of Valor's detection abilities. Officer Morrison explained how K-9s use their incredible sense of smell, 10,000 to 100,000 times more acute than humans, to locate narcotics, explosives, and missing persons. Another officer hid a training scent somewhere in the demonstration area, and Valor was released to search. The transformation in the dog was remarkable. His entire body became focused on the task, nose to the ground, working in a methodical pattern that covered every inch of the search area. Within 90 seconds, Valor sat abruptly next to a trash bin and barked once, a sharp, authoritative sound that made several small children jump. "Good boy," Morrison praised, rewarding Valor with a rubber ball that the dog carried proudly back to his handler. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. But the most impressive part came next, the protection demonstration. Morrison explained that K-9s were trained to protect their handlers and apprehend suspects when necessary. Another officer donned a heavily padded suit that made him look like an oversized action figure. At Morrison's command, this suspect began to run. "Fass," Morrison shouted, the German command for attack. Valor exploded into action. What had been a calm, controlled professional transformed into a powerful force of nature. He covered the distance in seconds, leaping and catching the padded sleeve with precision that demonstrated both power and remarkable control. The suspect struggled, and Valor held firm, growling, a sound so primal and fierce that it sent shivers down spines throughout the audience. But the most impressive part was what happened next. Morrison called out, "O's," release, and instantly Valor let go and returned to his handler's side, transforming back into the calm, controlled professional. His tail wagged now, pleased with his performance, waiting for his reward. The crowd erupted in applause. Children squealed with delight. Adults shook their heads in amazement at the dog's incredible training and athleticism. But Maria wasn't watching the crowd. She was watching Emma. Tears were streaming down her daughter's face, not tears of fear or sadness, but something else entirely. Emma's small body was trembling, her hands now pressed against her chest, as if trying to contain feelings too big for her little body. Her eyes never left Valor, who was now receiving praise and pets from Officer Morrison. "Are you okay, baby?" Maria whispered, concerned by the intensity of Emma's reaction. Emma didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge her mother's question. She simply stared at Valor with an expression of pure wonder, as if she were seeing something divine, something that spoke to a part of her soul that had been silent and isolated for 3 long years. Officer Morrison continued his presentation, explaining the years of training required for both handler and dog, the bond they developed, the sacrifices K-9 officers made. He talked about Valor's accomplishments: 3 successful search and rescue operations, numerous drug busts, 2 apprehensions of dangerous suspects. "But most importantly," Morrison said, his voice softening as he knelt beside his partner, "Valor reminds me every day what it means to be loyal, brave, and fully committed to serving others. These dogs don't do this work for money or recognition. They do it because they bond with their handlers and want to protect the people they love. That's what makes them heroes." As if responding to the praise, Valor's tail thumped against the ground, and his mouth opened in what looked remarkably like a smile, his tongue lolling out happily. The formal demonstration concluded with a round of thunderous applause. Officer Morrison announced that he and Valor would be available for meet and greets, along with the other K-9 teams, near the refreshment area. Families immediately began standing, gathering children, preparing to line up for the opportunity to meet these magnificent animals up close. But Emma didn't move. She sat frozen in her chair, still staring at the stage area where Valor stood beside his handler. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her small fists clenched and unclenched, as if she were gathering courage for something monumentally difficult. Maria watched her daughter with growing concern and curiosity. In 3 years of silent observation, she'd learned to read Emma's moods and states, but this was something new. This wasn't simple interest or even excitement. This was something profound, something transformative happening inside her little girl. "Do you want to go meet the dog?" Maria asked gently, already knowing the answer from the desperate longing in Emma's eyes. Emma's head turned sharply toward her mother, and for just a moment, Maria saw something flash across her daughter's face. Determination mixed with fear, desire mixed with anxiety, hope battling against whatever invisible force had kept her silent for so long. Then Emma did something she had never done before. She didn't just nod. She didn't just point. She grabbed her mother's hand with both of her small ones and pulled, urgently, insistently, with a strength born of desperate need. She needed to meet Valor, not wanted, needed, as if her very life depended on it. Maria's heart began to race as she stood, allowing Emma to lead her toward the growing crowd around the K-9 officers. She didn't understand what was happening, couldn't explain the electric anticipation that crackled in the air between them. But she trusted her instincts as a mother, and those instincts were screaming that they were standing on the precipice of something extraordinary. Something that would change everything. The crowd around the K-9 officers had swelled to at least 50 people, all eager for a chance to meet the remarkable police dogs. Parents lifted small children for better views, teenagers snapped photos with their phones, and excited chatter filled the air. 3 separate lines had formed, one for each K-9 team present at the demonstration. Maria held Emma's hand as they joined the back of the line for Officer Morrison and Valor. It was the longest of the three lines. Clearly, Valor's impressive demonstration had made him the star attraction. Maria estimated they'd be waiting at least 20 minutes, maybe longer. "We might be here a while, sweetie," Maria said softly to Emma, prepared to leave if her daughter grew restless or overwhelmed. Large crowds could sometimes trigger Emma's anxiety, causing her to retreat even further into herself. But Emma showed no signs of impatience or distress. She stood perfectly still, rising occasionally on her tiptoes to catch glimpses of Valor ahead. Her entire body thrummed with focused energy, like a compass needle pointing unwaveringly north. Maria had never seen her daughter so singularly determined. The line moved slowly. Ahead of them, children approached Valor with varying degrees of confidence. Some ran forward boldly, squealing with delight as they petted his soft fur. Others hung back shyly, needing parental encouragement before reaching out tentative hands. Officer Morrison managed each interaction with practiced ease, guiding children on how to properly approach a working dog, reminding them to be gentle, explaining what Valor liked and didn't like. Valor himself seemed to handle the attention with professional tolerance. His tail wagged politely for each child, and he sat patiently while small hands patted his head, stroked his back, and marveled at his size. But Maria noticed something. There was a certain detachment in the dog's demeanor. He was allowing the interactions but not particularly engaged by them. His eyes often drifted toward Morrison, waiting for his next command, ready to move on to whatever came next. As they inched closer, Maria could hear Morrison's repeated instructions. "Let him smell your hand first. Yes, you can pet his back but not his face right now. He's very well trained, but remember, he's a working dog, not a pet." Emma absorbed every word, watching intently as each child ahead of her took their turn. Her breathing had become quick and shallow, and Maria felt the small hand in hers growing clammy with nervous perspiration. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Maria asked, kneeling beside her daughter. "We can leave if you're feeling scared." Emma's head whipped around, and her eyes, those expressive hazel eyes, blazed with an intensity that took Maria's breath away. There was no fear in them, only fierce determination and something else Maria couldn't quite name. Longing, perhaps, or recognition, as if Emma had been searching for something her entire life and had just now found it. They moved up in line, 3 people ahead, then 2, then 1, a boisterous boy around 7 who monopolized Valor's attention for several minutes, asking Officer Morrison rapid-fire questions about police work while barely touching the dog. Then it was their turn. "Next, please," Officer Morrison called out with a warm smile, gesturing them forward. Maria stepped up with Emma, starting to introduce them. "Hello, officer, this is my daughter." She didn't get to finish her sentence. The moment Valor's eyes landed on Emma, everything changed. The professional police dog who had been tolerating the meet and greet with patient detachment suddenly went completely still. His ears, which had been casually swiveling to catch sounds around him, locked forward with laser focus. His dark eyes, which had been politely scanning the crowd, fixed on Emma with an intensity that made the hair on Maria's arms stand up. Officer Morrison noticed immediately. "Valor," he said, surprised by his partner's sudden change in demeanor. Then Valor did something that made Morrison's eyebrows shoot up in astonishment. Without any command, without any prompting, the highly trained police dog broke his sit-stay position. He stood and walked directly toward Emma, his movements deliberate and purposeful, completely ignoring protocol. "Valor, heel," Morrison commanded, confused and slightly concerned by this unusual behavior. But Valor didn't heel. For perhaps the first time in his career as a police K-9, he ignored his handler's direct command. He walked straight to Emma and sat down directly in front of her, closer than he'd sat for any other child that afternoon, so close that his nose was inches from her face. The crowd behind them fell silent, sensing something unusual was happening. Emma stood frozen, her eyes wide and locked with Valor's. The German shepherd gazed at her with penetrating gentleness, his head tilted slightly to one side. Then, slowly and deliberately, he lifted his right paw and placed it on Emma's knee, not roughly or playfully, but with careful precision, as if performing a sacred ritual. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Officer Morrison took a step forward, hand outstretched, ready to intervene if necessary. The people in line behind them craned their necks to see what was happening. But Valor showed no signs of aggression or unpredictability. His body language was calm, controlled, purposeful. His tail gave one slow, deliberate wag. His eyes never left Emma's face, and there was something in those dark canine eyes that seemed almost human, understanding, compassion, recognition. Emma remained perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 seconds. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her small body trembling with emotion. Tears began to slip down her cheeks, catching the afternoon sunlight like liquid diamonds. Then, with movements so slow they seemed to happen in a different time stream, Emma raised both of her small hands. Her fingers were shaking as they moved through the air between her body and the dog's face. Maria wanted to reach out, to guide her, to help her, but something held her back. An instinct that this moment belonged to Emma and Valor alone, that any interference would shatter whatever delicate magic was weaving itself between them. Emma's fingertips made contact with the soft fur on the bridge of Valor's nose. The dog closed his eyes briefly, as if savoring the touch, then opened them again, maintaining that penetrating gaze. Emma's fingers moved slowly, exploring the texture of his coat, the warmth of his skin beneath the fur, the solid reality of this magnificent creature who had somehow seen something in her that no one else had. Officer Morrison stood transfixed, his professional demeanor giving way to pure wonder. In 4 years of working with Valor, through countless public demonstrations and meet and greets, he had never seen his partner behave this way. Valor was responding to this little girl as if she were someone precious, someone who needed protection, someone who mattered in a way that transcended normal dog-human interaction. Maria watched through tears that were now streaming down her own face. She didn't understand what was happening, couldn't explain it rationally, but she felt it, the sacred quality of this moment, the way the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Emma's hands moved from Valor's nose to his head, stroking the soft fur between his ears. The dog leaned into her touch, his eyes half closing in what looked like contentment. His paw remained on her knee, a point of connection, a bridge between two souls. The world around them seemed to fade away. The crowd, the noise, the late afternoon sun, Officer Morrison, even Maria herself, all of it receded into background static. There was only a 3-year-old girl who had never spoken and a police dog who had somehow recognized something in her that called to him on a level beyond training or duty. Emma's lips began to move. At first, Maria thought she was imagining it, wishful thinking born from 3 years of desperate hopping. But no, Emma's mouth was definitely forming shapes, her throat was working, her chest was expanding with breath that carried purpose. Officer Morrison saw it too. His eyes widened, and he took an unconscious step forward, drawn by the momentous nature of what he was witnessing. The moment stretched taut like a rubber band pulled to its limit, tension building, reality itself seeming to thin and shimmer with possibility. Emma's hand stilled on Valor's head. The dog opened his eyes fully and looked at her with such profound gentleness that it seemed impossible for an animal to contain such emotion. Then Emma drew in a breath, deeper than normal, filled with courage and surrender in equal measure. And the entire trajectory of her life pivoted on what happened next. Her lips parted, her vocal cords, silent for 3 years and 247 days, prepared to vibrate. Her mind, which had understood language perfectly but had been unable to produce it, marshaled words that had existed in her thoughts but never in her voice. Valor's tail thumped once against the ground, as if in encouragement. Maria's hand flew to her mouth, her body shaking with anticipation and fear that this fragile moment might shatter before completion. The crowd behind them had gone completely silent, though they didn't fully understand why. They only sensed that something profound was occurring in this quiet circle of girl and dog. Officer Morrison held his breath, his trained mind recognizing breakthrough when he saw it, even if he didn't understand the full context. And Emma, sweet silent Emma who had lived in a world of gestures and expressions and locked away words, looked into Valor's understanding eyes and found safety there. Safety she had never felt anywhere else, with anyone else, not even with her loving parents. In that safety, the invisible wall that had imprisoned her voice for 3 years began to crack. Then it crumbled, and Emma Rodriguez spoke her first words, "Good dog." The words floated into the air, clear and crystalline, like the first notes of a song the world had been waiting 3 years to hear. Emma's voice was higher than Maria had imagined, sweeter, with a slight musical lilt that caught on the second word. Maria's legs buckled. She would have collapsed completely if not for the stranger standing beside her who instinctively reached out to steady her. Her hands flew to her mouth, trying to contain the sob that threatened to explode from her chest. Tears poured down her face in rivers, blurring her vision, but she blinked frantically, desperate not to miss a single second of this miracle unfolding before her eyes. Officer Morrison's clipboard clattered to the ground, forgotten. His mouth hung open in shock, his professional composure completely shattered. He'd witnessed many incredible things in his years of law enforcement, dangerous arrests, dramatic rescues, moments of human courage and kindness, but nothing had prepared him for this. Emma didn't stop. Now that the dam had broken, words tumbled out like water finally freed from behind a collapsed wall. "You're so pretty," she continued, her small hand still stroking Valor's head. Her voice gained confidence with each syllable growing stronger, more certain. "You're the prettiest dog I ever saw." Valor remained perfectly still, as if he understood the sacred nature of this moment and knew that any movement might break the spell. His dark eyes stayed locked on Emma's face, and his tail gave slow, gentle wags, not the excited thrashing of a playful dog, but the measured response of a professional who recognized he was performing his most important duty ever. "I love you," Emma whispered, leaning forward until her forehead touched Valor's nose. "I love you so much. You're so nice. You're so good." The crowd behind them had finally grasped that something extraordinary was happening. Maria heard gasps, then whispers spreading backward through the line like ripples on water. "Is that little girl talking? She wasn't before, was she? Oh my God, I think this is her first time speaking." Maria couldn't respond to them, couldn't acknowledge their presence. She was transfixed by her daughter, her speaking daughter, afraid that if she moved or breathed too loudly, this impossible dream would evaporate like morning mist. Emma pulled back slightly from Valor, her face radiant with joy and wonder. "What's your name?" she asked the dog, her voice still tentative but growing bolder. "Are you a police dog? You're so brave. I saw you run so fast. You were amazing." Officer Morrison finally found his voice, though it came out rough with emotion. "His name is Valor," he managed, kneeling down slowly beside his partner. He seems to really like you." Emma's head turned toward the officer, and for a moment, Maria worried that the presence of another person might send her daughter back into silence. But Emma surprised her again. "Valor," Emma repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "That's a beautiful name. Hi, Valor. Hi, you're my friend now, okay? You're my very best friend." Valor's response was to lean forward and gently lick Emma's cheek, one soft, careful swipe of his tongue that made the little girl giggle. The sound of Emma's laughter, something Maria had heard before but never accompanied by words, was almost more than she could bear. "He licked me," Emma exclaimed, giggling again. Mommy, did you see? Valor licked me, he likes me." The word mommy broke Maria completely. She sank to her knees beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak herself now. 3 years she had waited to hear that word directed at her in her daughter's voice. 3 years of signing, pointing, gesturing, but never hearing mommy spoken aloud. Emma turned to look at her mother, and her expression shifted from joy to concern. "Mommy, why are you crying? Are you sad?" Maria shook her head frantically, trying to form words through her sobs. "No, baby, no, I'm happy, so happy, you're talking. You're actually talking." "I am talking," Emma agreed, as if just now fully realizing this fact herself. She looked down at her own hand, still resting on Valor's head, then back at her mother. "Mommy, I can talk now." The words came out. They were stuck before, but now they came out. This simple explanation, so childlike yet so profound, made Maria laugh through her tears. "Yes, sweetheart," the words came out, "and your voice is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." By now, the entire crowd had gathered closer, drawn by the commotion and the spreading whispers. Officer Morrison stood up, instinctively moving to create a protective barrier around Emma and Valor, giving them space while people pulled out phones to record this extraordinary moment. Emma seemed oblivious to the crowd, her entire world reduced to Valor, her mother, and the incredible discovery that she could produce words. She continued talking, 3 years of pent-up thoughts and observations pouring out in an unstoppable stream. "Valor is so soft, Mommy. His fur is so nice, and his ears are so big. Look how they move. Can we get a dog like Valor? I want a dog. Can we, Mommy? Please. I'll talk to him every day. I'll tell him stories. I'll tell him about my toys and my room and my favorite foods. I like macaroni and cheese. Do you like macaroni and cheese, Valor?" The German Shepherd's tail wagged more enthusiastically now, though whether in response to Emma's question or simply to her animated energy, no one could say. Officer Morrison caught Maria's eye, and she saw that this hardened police officer had tears running down his own face. He mouthed 2 words, "This is incredible." Maria nodded, unable to speak, watching as her daughter continued her one-sided conversation with Valor, who listened with the patience of a saint and the attentiveness of the professional he was trained to be. "I saw you jump so high during the show," Emma was saying, using both hands now to gesture excitedly while still touching Valor with at least one hand at all times, as if breaking physical contact might break the magic. "You caught that bad guy's arm. Were you scared?" "I was a little scared, but then I saw you were just pretending. You're so smart." "Officer Mommy, no, wait," she giggled at her mistake. "Officer Morrison said you're the best dog. Are you the best dog?" "I think you are." Someone in the crowd called out, "Did anyone get that on video? This needs to be documented." Maria heard several people respond that yes, they were recording. Part of her bristled at the invasion of privacy, but another part, the part that had despaired of ever hearing her daughter's voice, wanted this moment preserved forever, wanted proof that it had really happened. Emma continued talking, the words flowing easier now, her vocabulary impressive for a child who had never spoken before. Of course, Maria realized with wonder, Emma had been learning language all along, storing words and grammar and syntax in her mind, even though she couldn't produce them. Now they were all coming out at once, a flood of communication that had been building pressure for 3 years. "Do you sleep in a special bed?" Emma asked Valor. "Do you eat special food? Do you have toys? I have a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Floppy. He's my favorite. Maybe you can meet him someday. Would you like that?" Officer Morrison finally found his professional bearing again, though his voice still shook slightly. "Ma'am," he said to Maria, "I don't fully understand what just happened here, but this is your daughter's first time speaking." Maria nodded, wiping her face with trembling hands. "She's 3 years old. She's never said a single word until today. We've been to specialists, therapists, doctors. They diagnosed her with selective mutism. We've been trying everything, but nothing worked. Until Valor." Morrison looked down at his partner with newfound awe. I've always known he was special, but this—" He trailed off, shaking his head in wonder. Emma had finally paused in her monologue to Valor, but only because she was attempting to wrap her small arms around the dog's neck in a hug. Valor accepted the embrace with gentle dignity, careful not to knock the little girl over despite the awkward angle. "I love you, Valor," Emma murmured into his fur. "You made the stuck words come out. Thank you so much." Maria watched her daughter hugging the police dog, watched Valor's patient acceptance of this affection, and felt something shift fundamentally in her understanding of the world. There were forces at work here beyond psychology and medicine, connections between souls that transcended species, moments of grace that couldn't be explained by science alone. A woman's voice came from the crowd, thick with emotion. "I work at Channel 7 News. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Would you be willing to share your story?" Before Maria could respond, a man added, "My wife is a speech therapist at Children's Hospital. She needs to know about this. This could help so many other children." Maria felt overwhelmed by the attention, protective of her daughter and this fragile new development. But Emma, still hugging Valor, seemed completely unfazed by the crowd. She had found her safe space, her voice, and her courage all at once in the presence of this remarkable dog. Officer Morrison made a decision. He raised his voice, addressing the crowd with the authority of his position. "Folks, I know this is extraordinary, but I'm going to ask you all to give this family some space. This is a private moment, and they need time to process what's happening." The crowd murmured but began to step back, though phones remained raised, still recording. Morrison turned to Maria with kind eyes. "Is there somewhere more private we can go? My captain is here today. I think he'd want to meet Emma and hear about this. Plus, I'd like to make sure Valor can spend a little more time with her if that's okay with you." Maria looked at her daughter, who had finally released Valor from her hug, but kept one hand firmly planted on his back, as if afraid that letting go completely might send her back into silence. "Emma, sweetie," Maria said softly, still marveling at the fact that she could have a real conversation with her daughter now. "Would you like to spend more time with Valor?" Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. Yes, please, Mommy, can we stay with Valor?" "We can," Maria promised, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. "We can stay as long as Officer Morrison says it's okay." "It's more than okay," Morrison assured her, his hand resting proudly on Valor's head. "Something tells me Valor and Emma have more to teach each other." As they prepared to move to a quieter area, Emma walked alongside Valor, her small hand buried in his fur, talking continuously about everything she saw, thought, and felt. 3 years of silence transformed into an endless stream of words, all because a police dog with extraordinary instincts had recognized a little girl's silent struggle and showed her it was safe to find her voice. 3 days after the miracle at Riverside Park, Maria and Carlos sat in Dr. Sarah Chen's familiar office, watching through the observation window as Emma played in the adjacent therapy room. Their daughter was building a tower with colorful blocks, narrating her every action aloud. "This red one goes here. No, wait, maybe the blue one. Yes, the blue one is better. Now the yellow one on top." Dr. Chen sat across from them, her hands folded on her desk, her expression a mixture of professional fascination and genuine joy. She had worked with Emma for over a year, and in all that time, she had never heard the child speak a single word. Now, just 72 hours after meeting a police dog, Emma hadn't stopped talking. "I've been a child psychologist for 15 years, Dr. Chen began, her voice filled with wonder, "and I've never witnessed such a dramatic breakthrough. When you called me Sunday evening, I honestly thought you were mistaken, that maybe Emma had made a sound and you were so desperate to hear her speak that you interpreted it as words." Maria smiled through fresh tears. She'd been crying on and off for 3 days straight, unable to fully process the enormity of what had happened. "I thought I was dreaming at first too, But Carlos, when he came home from work and Emma ran to the door shouting, "Daddy, Daddy, I can talk now," her voice broke and Carlos squeezed her hand. "I nearly had a heart attack," Carlos admitted, his own eyes glistening. "I thought Maria was playing a recording or something. I couldn't believe it was really Emma's voice." Dr. Chen pulled out a thick file, Emma's case history. "Let me explain what I believe happened from a clinical perspective. Emma's selective mutism, as we discussed before, wasn't a physical inability to speak. It was an anxiety disorder so severe that it created a psychological barrier to speech. Think of it like an invisible wall between her thoughts and her voice." She opened the file to a page of notes. "We know Emma's receptive language was always advanced. She understood everything said to her, processed complex instructions, and clearly had sophisticated thoughts. But the anxiety, which we never fully identified the source of, prevented her from expressing those thoughts verbally." "But why?" Maria asked, the question that had haunted her for 3 years. "Why was she so anxious? We gave her a loving home, we never pressured her. What caused this?" Dr. Chen's expression softened with compassion. "That's the frustrating part about selective mutism. We don't always find a clear cause. Sometimes it's a traumatic event. Sometimes it's an innate temperament combined with environmental factors. Sometimes it's neurological differences we don't yet understand. In Emma's case, I suspect she has an extremely sensitive nervous system. The world simply felt too overwhelming, too unpredictable, too dangerous for her to risk the vulnerability of speech." Carlos leaned forward. "So what was different about Valor? Why could she talk to a dog when she couldn't talk to us, her own parents?" "That's the remarkable part," Dr. Chen said, pulling out several research articles from her desk drawer. "There's extensive research on the therapeutic benefits of animals, particularly dogs, for children with communication disorders, autism, anxiety, and trauma. Dogs offer something humans simply cannot: completely non-judgmental acceptance." She spread the articles across her desk. When Emma looked at Valor, she didn't see expectations. She didn't see disappointment if she failed to speak. She didn't see pressure or worry or hope. She saw pure, uncomplicated acceptance. Dogs don't care if you talk or not. They respond to energy, emotion, presence, not words. Maria absorbed this, watching Emma through the window. So the dog made her feel safe enough to try. "Exactly," Dr. Chen confirmed. "But it's more than just safety. Research shows that interacting with dogs releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone in humans. It reduces cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Literally, on a neurochemical level, Valor's presence calmed Emma's anxiety enough that the barrier to speech became permeable." She pulled out another study. "There's also something called the animal-human bond effect. Children often feel less self-conscious with animals. If Emma tried to speak to a person and no sound came out, she might have felt judged or pitied. But with Valor, there was no social risk. Even if she tried to speak and failed, the dog wouldn't have cared or reacted negatively." Carlos shook his head in amazement. So Valor essentially gave her a safe space to practice using her voice without fear of failure. "Precisely. And here's what's even more fascinating." Dr. Chen pulled up a video on her computer, something she'd recorded during their session an hour earlier. "Watch what happens when I ask Emma about Valor." In the video, Dr. Chen's voice asked, "Emma, can you tell me about your friend Valor?" Emma's entire demeanor changed. Her body relaxed, her face lit up, and words poured out with enthusiasm and confidence. "Valor is the best dog in the whole world. He's a police dog and he's so brave and strong, and he has the softest fur and the nicest eyes, and he let me hug him, and he licked my face and made me laugh." Dr. Chen paused the video. Notice the fluency, the confidence, the complexity of her language. When Emma talks about Valor, there's no hesitation, no anxiety. He's become what we call an anchor, a source of emotional safety that she can mentally return to when she feels anxious. "Is that why she keeps asking about him constantly?" Maria asked. Every hour she wants to know when she can see Valor again. Yes, Dr. Chen nodded. Right now, Valor represents the breakthrough itself. He's proof to Emma that she can speak, that it's safe to speak, that the world doesn't end when she uses her voice. As long as she can connect to that feeling, that sense of safety she experienced with him, she can maintain her speech. There was a long pause as Maria and Carlos absorbed this information. Finally, Carlos asked the question that had been weighing on both their minds. But what happens if she can't see Valor again? Will she stop talking? Will we lose this progress? Dr. Chen considered this carefully. That's a valid concern, and it's why I wanted to meet with you today. The goal now is to generalize Emma's comfort with speaking beyond just thinking about Valor. We need to build her confidence that speaking is safe in all contexts, with all people, not just when she's thinking about or talking to the dog. How do we do that? Maria asked anxiously. Carefully and gradually, Dr. Chen assured her. The good news is that Emma has now experienced speaking successfully. She knows she can do it. She's heard her own voice, received positive responses, and the world didn't collapse around her. That's enormous progress. Now we build on it. She pulled out a treatment plan she'd been drafting. I recommend we continue regular therapy sessions, but with a new focus. We'll work on helping Emma understand that the safety she felt with Valor can exist in other relationships too. We'll practice speaking in gradually expanding circles, first here in therapy, then with you at home in new situations, then with extended family, then with trusted friends, and eventually in public settings like preschool. And Valor, Carlos asked, should she see him again? Absolutely, Dr. Chen said firmly. If possible, regular contact with Valor would be incredibly beneficial, at least in the short term. He's her bridge to speech right now. But we'll also work on Emma not becoming dependent on his physical presence. We'll teach her to imagine his acceptance, to carry that feeling of safety with her even when he's not there. Maria felt relief wash over her. Officer Morrison gave us his card. He said he'd be happy to arrange visits. He seemed as amazed by what happened as we were. I'd like to speak with Officer Morrison myself, if you're comfortable with that, Dr. Chen said. I want to understand exactly what happened from his perspective. Also, I'd like to document this case, with your permission, of course. This kind of breakthrough could provide valuable insights for other children with selective mutism. Through the observation window, Emma had finished her tower and was now making it talk in different voices. Hello, Mr. Blue Block. How are you today? I'm very good, Miss Red Block. Would you like to play? The imagination and linguistic complexity she displayed was stunning, proof that her mind had been developing language normally all along, just waiting for the right key to unlock it. Dr. Chen followed their gaze. You know what the most beautiful part of all this is? Emma isn't just speaking, she's joyful about it. Many children we work with, when they finally start talking, are hesitant and anxious. But Emma is celebrating her voice. She's discovering the pleasure of communication, the power of being heard, the connection that comes from sharing her thoughts. She hasn't stopped talking for 3 days, Carlos laughed, though his eyes were wet. Last night she talked herself to sleep, literally mid-sentence, about what color crayon she wanted to use for a drawing. That's actually developmentally appropriate, Dr. Chen smiled. She's making up for lost time in a sense. 3 years of stored observations, questions, and commentary are all coming out at once. It will likely settle into more typical speech patterns within a few weeks. Maria had a sudden thought. Dr. Chen, do you think, could there be other children like Emma who might benefit from meeting Valor, or other therapy dogs? Dr. Chen's eyes lit up. That's an excellent question. Animal-assisted therapy is a growing field, and what happened with Emma could potentially help us develop better interventions for selective mutism. There are therapy dog programs specifically for children with communication disorders, though police dogs like Valor aren't typically used in that capacity. Officer Morrison mentioned that Valor is actually calmer and more intuitive than many dogs specifically trained for therapy work, Maria recalled. He said Valor seemed to know Emma needed something special. Dogs are remarkable that way, Dr. Chen agreed. They read human emotion and energy in ways we're only beginning to scientifically understand. Valor may have sensed Emma's anxiety and responded to it instinctively, the way some dogs can sense seizures or detect changes in blood sugar. We may never fully understand what passed between them in that moment. The session was drawing to a close, and Dr. Chen stood to retrieve Emma from the playroom. I want to see Emma weekly for the next month, then we'll reassess. I also want to coordinate with Officer Morrison about regular visits with Valor, maybe once a week to start, and I'd like to eventually observe one of their interactions if that's possible. We'll make it happen, Carlos promised, whatever Emma needs. As Dr. Chen opened the door to call Emma, the little girl's voice rang out clearly. Dr. Chen, Dr. Chen, look at my tower, I made it so tall. Do you want me to tell you about each block? This one is the daddy block, and this one is the mommy block, and this one is the Emma block, and this one is the Valor block. He's the most important one because he holds everyone else up. Maria and Carlos exchanged looks, both thinking the same thing. Valor truly was holding their entire world up right now, and they would be forever grateful to a German Shepherd police dog who had seen their daughter's silence and somehow known exactly how to break it. Tuesday afternoon arrived with autumn sunshine filtering through scattered clouds, and Emma could barely contain her excitement. She'd been talking about this moment since Sunday evening, counting down the days, hours, and eventually minutes until she could see Valor again. How much longer, Mommy? When do we leave? Is it time yet? Emma bounced on her toes in the living room, wearing her favorite purple dress, the same one she'd worn to Community Safety Day. She'd insisted on it, explaining with the earnest logic of a 3-year-old that Valor knows this dress. He'll remember me better. Maria checked her watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. 5 more minutes, sweetheart. Officer Morrison said 2 o'clock, and we don't want to be too early. Police officers are very busy people. But Valor isn't too busy for me, Emma stated with absolute confidence. He's my special friend. He's waiting for me. I know he is. Carlos emerged from the bedroom, camera in hand. I'm not missing this, he announced. He'd arranged to leave work early, something his usually strict supervisor had approved immediately after hearing why. The story of Emma's breakthrough had spread through Carlos's workplace like wildfire, and his coworkers had been celebrating as if Emma were their own child. The Cleveland Police Department's K-9 training facility was located on the east side of the city, a modern building with spacious outdoor training grounds. As they pulled into the parking lot, Emma pressed her face against the car window, searching for any sign of Valor. Officer Jake Morrison was waiting for them at the entrance, and he wasn't alone. Captain Richard Stevens, the head of the K-9 unit, stood beside him, along with 2 other K-9 officers and their dogs. News of what had happened at Community Safety Day had circulated through the entire department. Emma, Morrison called out with a warm smile as the Rodriguez family approached. Valor's been asking about you all week. Emma giggled and ran toward him, though she stopped short of the entrance, suddenly shy. Really? He asked about me. Well, in his own way, Morrison winked. Every time we pass the park now, he looks around like he's searching for something. I think he's searching for you. Captain Stevens stepped forward, a bear of a man with silver hair and kind eyes. You must be the famous Emma we've been hearing about. I'm Captain Stevens. It's an honor to meet the little girl who reminded us all why we do this job. Emma looked up at him curiously. You have police dogs too? I used to, Stevens said gently. Now I supervise all the K-9 teams, but Officer Morrison tells me you've become very special friends with Valor. He's the best dog in the whole world, Emma declared with absolute certainty. Can I see him now, please? Morrison laughed. He's waiting in the training room. He's been packing all morning. I think he knew you were coming. He glanced at Maria and Carlos. If it's okay with your parents, we've set up a private space where Emma and Valor can spend some time together. Maria's eyes welled up again. She seemed to cry at everything these days, overwhelmed by gratitude and joy. That would be wonderful. Dr. Chen mentioned you two had spoken. We had a long conversation yesterday, Morrison confirmed as he led them inside. She explained selective mutism to me and how significant Emma's breakthrough was. I'll be honest, I'm still processing it. In all my years working with Valor, I've never seen him respond to anyone the way he responded to your daughter. The building's interior was clean and professional, with photographs of K-9 teams lining the hallways. Emma stared at each picture they passed, asking questions in rapid-fire succession. Is that Valor? No. Who's that dog? What's his name? Is he nice? Does he catch bad guys too? They arrived at a spacious room with padded flooring, clearly designed for training exercises. And there, sitting perfectly at attention in the center of the room, was Valor. The moment the door opened and Valor saw Emma, his professional composure cracked. His tail began wagging furiously, and he whined, a sound Morrison later swore he'd never heard his partner make before. The dog looked at his handler with pleading eyes, asking permission. Valor Blabe, Morrison commanded, stay. Then to Emma, you can go to him. Emma didn't need to be told twice. She ran across the room, her small feet slapping against the padded floor, and threw her arms around Valor's neck. The German Shepherd accepted the embrace with gentle patience, his tail never stopping its enthusiastic wagging. Valor, I missed you so much. Did you miss me? I've been talking and talking and talking, just like you helped me do. I told everyone about you, my mommy and daddy and Dr. Chen and my abuela on the phone and even the mailman. They all know about you now. Morrison watched with undisguised amazement. Captain Stevens pulled out his phone, recording the interaction. Carlos had his camera raised, capturing every moment. But Maria simply watched, her hand over her heart, witnessing the continuation of a miracle. Emma pulled back from Valor, holding his face between her small hands. I have so much to tell you. I learned a new song at home. Do you want to hear it? It goes like this. And she began singing a slightly off-key rendition of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, complete with hand gestures. Valor sat perfectly still throughout the performance, his dark eyes fixed on Emma's face with an intensity that seemed almost human. When she finished, he leaned forward and gently licked her cheek, making her dissolve into giggles. He liked it, Mommy, did you see? Valor liked my song. Over the next hour, Emma and Valor became the center of an extraordinary scene. Morrison brought out some of Valor's training toys, showing Emma how to give the dog simple commands. To everyone's surprise, Valor, who typically only responded to Morrison's commands, actually obeyed Emma's high-pitched sit and down. I've never seen anything like this, Morrison murmured to Maria and Carlos, who stood watching from the side of the room. Valor is trained to respond only to me. It's a safety issue. We can't have police dogs taking commands from random people. But with Emma, it's like he's making an exception. What does that mean? Carlos asked. Morrison shook his head slowly. I think it means Valor has decided Emma is his to protect, not in an aggressive way, but he's bonded with her. In 4 years of partnership, I've never seen him bond with anyone except me. Captain Stevens joined their conversation. Officer Morrison, I've been thinking, what would you say to making this arrangement more official? Structured visits, maybe weekly, so Emma can continue her progress. Morrison's face lit up. Sir, I was hoping you'd suggest that. I think it would benefit both Emma and Valor. He's been different since Sunday, calmer somehow, more content. It's like having a purpose beyond police work has fulfilled something in him. They formalized the plan right there. Every Tuesday afternoon, weather permitting, Emma would visit the K-9 facility for an hour with Valor. Morrison would supervise, ensuring safety while giving them space to interact. Dr. Chen would observe periodically to document Emma's progress. As weeks passed, the Tuesday visits became the highlight of Emma's week, and though he'd never admit it publicly, Morrison's as well. He watched in wonder as Emma's vocabulary exploded, her confidence soared, and her joy in communication became infectious. Emma would arrive each Tuesday bursting with stories to share with Valor. She'd tell him about her day at preschool, which she'd started attending, now that she could speak, about the butterflies she'd seen in the garden, about the books her mother read to her, about everything and nothing. And Valor would listen, his noble head tilted slightly, his eyes never leaving her face, his tail offering gentle wags of encouragement. Morrison began bringing educational elements into their visits. He taught Emma about Valor's training, explaining how police dogs learn to track scents, search buildings, and protect their handlers. Emma absorbed every detail, asking sophisticated questions that surprised the veteran officer. "Why does Valor need to train every day if he already knows everything?" she asked during their fourth visit. Morrison smiled. "Same reason you practice your letters and numbers, Emma. Even when you're good at something, practice keeps you sharp. Plus, training time is when Valor and I build our trust in each other." "Like how talking to Valor builds my trust?" Emma asked with the unexpected wisdom children sometimes display. Morrison felt his throat tighten, exactly like that. The local news eventually caught wind of the story, and Channel 7 ran a segment titled, "Police Dog Gives Girl Her Voice." The reporter, a woman named Jennifer Shaw who had been at Community Safety Day, interviewed the Rodriguez family with sensitivity and respect. Emma, now completely comfortable speaking on camera, explained earnestly how Valor has magic in his eyes that makes words come out. The segment went viral. Within days, the Cleveland Police Department was flooded with calls from parents of children with selective mutism, autism, and other communication disorders, all asking if their children could meet Valor too. Captain Stevens held a press conference, explaining gently that while Valor remained a working police dog with important duties, the department was exploring the possibility of partnering with therapy dog organizations to help other children. But Emma remained Valor's special friend, the little girl who had somehow unlocked something in the dog's heart just as he had unlocked her voice. By their 8th Tuesday visit, Emma was speaking at an age-appropriate level in all contexts. Her preschool teacher reported she was thriving, making friends, participating in circle time, and even performing in the class's Harvest Festival program. Yet Emma still needed Valor, not to speak anymore. That barrier had been permanently broken, but because the bond they'd formed transcended therapy or intervention. They had become genuine friends, each filling a need in the other that neither fully understood but both deeply valued. Morrison watched them together during that 8th visit, Emma chattering away while braiding ribbons into Valor's collar, the dog accepting her ministrations with patient contentment. "You know what the amazing thing is," Morrison said quietly to Maria, who had stayed for this visit. "I always knew Valor was a hero. He saved lives, caught dangerous criminals, found missing people. But this," he gestured toward Emma and the dog, "this might be his most important work yet." Maria wiped away tears, happy ones, always happy ones now. He saved her life too in a different way. He gave her back her voice. He gave her back herself. "They saved each other," Morrison corrected gently. "Look at him. I've never seen him this peaceful." And it was true. Valor, the fierce and focused police dog, wore an expression of pure contentment as Emma continued her cheerful monologue, her small hands gentle on his fur, her voice, that beautiful, hard-won voice, filling the training room with stories and laughter and the simple joy of being heard. 7 years had passed since that miraculous Sunday in September, and Riverside Park was once again filled with people, police vehicles, and colorful banners. But this time, the crowd had gathered for a different reason, to honor a hero who had given 10 years of service to the Cleveland Police Department. Today was Valor's retirement ceremony. 10-year-old Emma Rodriguez stood backstage in the temporary pavilion, smoothing down her navy blue dress with nervous hands. Her long dark hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and she clutched a stack of index cards covered in her own careful handwriting. Unlike the little girl who had been trapped in silence 7 years ago, Emma was now known at Franklin Elementary School as the girl who always had something to say, often raising her hand first in class, performing in every school play, and never meeting a stranger she couldn't strike up a conversation with. But standing here, about to give a speech in front of hundreds of people, she felt the familiar flutter of butterflies in her stomach. "You're going to do great, Mija," her mother whispered, adjusting Emma's collar. Maria's hair now had threads of silver at the temples, but her eyes still filled with tears at significant moments, and this was certainly one of them. "What if I mess up?" Emma asked, voicing the worry that had kept her awake the night before. "What if I forget what I want to say?" Carlos knelt beside his daughter, his warehouse uniform replaced today by his best suit. "Then you'll remember, or you'll say something different. That's the beautiful thing about having a voice, Emma. You can always use it, even when you're nervous." Officer Jake Morrison appeared at the edge of the pavilion, and Emma's face immediately brightened. Over 7 years, Morrison had become like family. He'd attended Emma's 4th birthday party, her kindergarten graduation, her first piano recital. He'd brought Valor to visit her classroom 3 times, delighting an entire generation of Franklin Elementary students with demonstrations of police dog work. "There's my favorite speaker," Morrison said with his warm smile, though Emma noticed the redness around his eyes. Today was emotional for him too. Retiring Valor meant the end of a partnership that had defined his career. "Valor's been asking about you." "How is he?" Emma asked anxiously. She'd seen Valor just last Tuesday for their regular visit, but she worried constantly about the aging dog. His muzzle was now completely gray, and arthritis had slowed his once powerful stride. He'd been officially retired from active duty 3 months ago, and today's ceremony would make it official to the public. "Resting in the shade," Morrison reported, "saving his energy for his big moment, and to see you, of course." Captain Stevens' voice boomed through the speaker system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We'll be beginning the ceremony in 5 minutes." Emma's stomach did a somersault. Through a gap in the pavilion curtains, she could see the assembled crowd, police officers in dress uniforms, city council members, reporters with cameras, and hundreds of community members who had been touched by Valor's service over the years. She spotted her entire 4th grade class sitting in a reserved section, waving handmade signs that read, "Thank you, Valor," and "Hero Dog." Dr. Sarah Chen appeared, having arrived just in time. She hugged Emma warmly. "I wouldn't miss this for anything. Are you ready?" "I think so," Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Dr. Chen, do you think Valor knows how much he changed my life?" The psychologist smiled. "I think Valor knows he's loved. That's what matters to dogs, not grand concepts, but simple, pure love, and you've given him plenty of that." The ceremony began with Captain Stevens' opening remarks, praising Valor's decade of distinguished service. He recounted statistics: 47 successful narcotic seizures, 12 search and rescue operations, 23 suspect apprehensions, countless community events. The crowd applauded at appropriate moments, impressed by the numbers. But then Stevens' voice softened. "However, Valor's most important contribution to our community might not be found in any official report. 7 years ago, at a routine community safety day, Valor did something extraordinary. He gave a little girl her voice." All eyes turned to Emma as she was invited to the podium. Her legs felt shaky as she climbed the steps, but then she saw Valor. Morrison had brought him to the side of the stage, and the aging German shepherd sat at attention, his dark eyes finding Emma immediately. His tail began to wag, slower than in his younger days, but no less enthusiastic. That was all Emma needed. Her nervousness melted away. "Hello, everyone," she began, her voice clear and strong through the microphone. "My name is Emma Rodriguez, and 7 years ago I couldn't say those words. I couldn't say any words. I had selective mutism, which meant I was so anxious that I couldn't speak, even though I wanted to." She glanced at her index cards but found she didn't need them. The words were in her heart. "I was 3 years old and the world felt scary and too big and too loud. My parents tried everything to help me, doctors, therapists, specialists. Everyone was kind, but nothing worked. The words stayed stuck inside me, like they were trapped behind a wall I couldn't break down." Emma paused, looking directly at Valor. "Then I met Valor. He was doing a demonstration here at Riverside Park, showing everyone how brave and smart and amazing police dogs are. And when I looked into his eyes, something happened. I felt safe, safer than I'd ever felt before." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Valor didn't care that I couldn't talk. He didn't expect anything from me. He just looked at me with these kind, gentle eyes, and he put his paw on my knee, and somehow I knew that it was okay to try. That even if I failed, he wouldn't judge me. He wouldn't be disappointed. He would just love me anyway. Emma's voice wavered slightly, emotion catching in her throat. Maria dabbed at her eyes in the front row. "So I tried, and the words came out. 'Good dog,' I said, and then I couldn't stop. 3 years of words just poured out, and my mommy cried, and Officer Morrison cried, and I kept talking and talking because Valor showed me it was safe." She looked out at the crowd now, making eye contact the way her teachers had taught her. "For 7 years, Valor has been my special friend. Every Tuesday I visited him. I told him about school, about my friends, about books I was reading, about everything. And he always listened like what I had to say was the most important thing in the world." Emma's voice grew stronger. "Valor didn't just teach me to talk. He taught me to be brave. He taught me that it's okay to be scared, but you should try anyway. He taught me that real courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. He taught me that sometimes the best therapy comes with 4 legs and a wagging tail." The crowd chuckled through their tears. "Now Valor is retiring, and he deserves the best retirement ever. He's been protecting Cleveland for 10 years, but he's also been healing hearts, including mine. So thank you, Valor. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't speak. Thank you for loving me when I felt unlovable. Thank you for being my hero." Emma set down the microphone and walked to where Valor sat. She knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck the way she had 7 years ago. The dog leaned into her embrace, his gray muzzle resting on her shoulder. "I love you," she whispered into his fur, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "I'll always love you." The crowd erupted in applause, but Emma barely heard it. She was focused on Valor, on memorizing this moment. The warmth of his fur, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the unconditional acceptance that radiated from him even in his senior years. Morrison approached with a special medal, the Cleveland Police Department's Community Service Commendation, the highest honor a K-9 could receive. He placed it around Valor's neck, his own voice thick with emotion as he spoke about his partner's dedication, intelligence, and heart. But the most touching moment came when Captain Stevens announced Valor's retirement placement. "Valor has served this city with distinction, and now it's time for him to rest. After careful consideration and with the full support of the department, we've decided that Valor will retire to the home of the Rodriguez family, where he'll spend his remaining years with the little girl whose life he changed." Emma gasped, looking at her parents in shock. Maria was crying openly now, nodding. Carlos grinned, giving her a thumbs up. "Really?" Emma breathed, looking at Morrison. The officer smiled through his own tears. "Really? I'll miss my partner every day, but I can't think of anywhere he'd rather be than with you, Emma. You two belong together." The ceremony concluded with a standing ovation, but Emma hardly noticed. She was too busy planning, where Valor would sleep, her room, obviously, what she would feed him, only the best, how she would take care of him with all her heart. 3 months later, on a crisp December afternoon, Emma sat in her backyard with Valor stretched out beside her on a soft blanket. His arthritis made long walks difficult now, so they spent most of their time like this, together, peaceful, content. Emma was reading aloud from her current favorite book, a fantasy novel about dragons and brave knights. Valor's head rested on her lap, his breathing deep and even. Every few paragraphs, Emma would pause to stroke his graying fur, to scratch behind his ears the way he liked. And the knight realized, Emma read, that true courage wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about showing up even when you're scared. It was about being kind, even when kindness is hard. She looked down at Valor, who gazed back at her with those same dark, understanding eyes that had changed her life 7 years ago. "That's like you," she told him softly. "You showed me what real courage looks like. You showed me that it's okay to be vulnerable, that asking for help isn't weakness, that love is the strongest force in the world." Valor's tail thumped weakly against the blanket. Maria called from the house that dinner was ready, but Emma lingered a moment longer. At 10 years old, she understood that Valor wouldn't be with her forever. Dogs, even hero dogs, had shorter lifespans than humans. But she also understood that the gift Valor had given her, her voice, her confidence, her courage, would last her entire life. "Come on, boy," she said gently, helping the aging dog to his feet. "Let's go inside. I made you something special today. I read that sweet potatoes are good for dogs with arthritis." As they walked slowly toward the house, Emma matching her pace to Valor's careful steps, she thought about her future. She'd already decided. She wanted to become either a veterinarian or a speech therapist, maybe somehow both. She wanted to help others the way Valor had helped her, wanted to be a bridge between silence and voice, between fear and courage, between isolation and connection. "When I grow up," she told Valor as they reached the back door, "I'm going to help kids find their voices, just like you helped me. I'm going to tell them about you, about how a police dog with a big heart taught a scared little girl that it's safe to speak." Valor looked up at her, and Emma could have sworn she saw understanding in those deep brown eyes, understanding and approval and love. "You'll always be my hero," Emma whispered, opening the door. "Always." And as they entered the warm house together, the girl who had found her voice and the dog who had given it to her, Emma knew with absolute certainty that some bonds transcended species, time, and circumstance. Some bonds were simply meant to be, written in the stars, sealed with unconditional love. And nothing, not even time itself, could ever truly break them.